Well, yeah, let me just show you all some video of what happened yesterday in the city of Culiacan in Mexico. It's a straight up war. Less than a
Yeah,
week
it's
before.
incredible.
Less
It's
than a week
incredible. They've
before.
told everyone to stay inside. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
war zone at this point.
Um, less than a week before Joe Biden's arrival, and here's what it looks like. Let me put on the sound. These are Mexican gunships attempting to opening fire on members of the Sinaloa Cartel, and I'll explain what's happening there. I mean, the fighting lasted all day and all night in civilian neighborhoods. Scores of people were injured. These are gunships provided by the U.S., by the Pentagon. Okay, a military jet landed in Culiacan in their international airport, and it's being fired. This military jet is being fired upon by members of the Sinaloa Cartel. Here's even. This is wild footage. I gotta get this on screen. This is a member of the Sinaloa Cartel. This is an anti-aircraft weapon, and they're trying to down U.S. supplied helicopter gunships. This is heavy. No, I mean it's light weaponry, but they're seriously armed.
Wow.
And we could show more, but basically what's happening is that ahead of Biden's visit, the Mexican Marines, under orders from President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, AMLO, arrested Ovidio Guzman, known as El Raton, or the Mouse, who is the son, I think he's 32 years old, of the most well-known narco leader in the world, Chapo Guzman. Ovidio Guzman is said to have been engaged in drug trafficking since he was a teenager. The US DEA has put out a $5 million award for him. They've been pushing the Mexican authorities to do this. And in 2019, Guzman was arrested and then broken out of jail in Culiacan by the Sinaloa Cartel, and he's been free ever since. So this was like a top priority ahead of Biden's visit, and it's caused a full-scale war on the streets of Culiacan. Dan, any thoughts on what's happening there?
Well, at least it seems to me, and I like AMLO a lot, and I think he's done a lot of great stuff, but this seems to be a misstep. I think he did this to try to impress Biden, before he came to Mexico, and now he's unleashed some terrible violence. Mexico's really been caught in the middle of this war on drugs, so-called, that the U.S. wanted, right?
Right.
And it's only increased violence in Mexico without really diminishing any drug trafficking into the United States. And in fact, we know, by the way, you remember the Fast and Furious scandal, the Fast and Furious.
Yeah, I was going to go to that next.
Yeah, has nothing to do with your ninth installment of that movie. It is some guns that were sent to Mexico for drug interdiction ended up in the hands of one of the cartels.
Right.
Which happens all the time, by the way. This was I would say a huge scandal, but a momentary one. It kind of was on the screen and then left. But it's just been a disaster for Mexico, and I think AMLO fell into the trap of trying to do something in terms of the war on drugs, again, to impress his overlords from the north, and it really backfired.
Yeah, well, they did at least capture El Raton, and they've transferred him to Mexico's highest security military base. But Dan, I mean, that's why you're the man, because you know this stuff as well as anyone out there. Fast and Furious. This is Forbes, it's mainstream media. Was Operation Fast and Furious really part of a secret deal between the DEA and Mexico's Sinaloa drug cartel? Okay, Fast and Furious was said by the Obama administration to be an effort to tag guns and allow the hormigas, the ants who are the straw buyers who go to the drug, to go to the gun shows in the U.S. to bring those back across the border. The U.S. would allow them to buy them. The DEA allowed them to buy them on the grounds that they would track the guns and then be able to track and surveil the cartels. But Mexico's El Universal newspaper interviewed DEA agents and jailed Sinaloa Cartel members and found that, if I can get through all of these pop-up ads, and for example, a highly placed member of the Sinaloa Cartel said that the deal involved the cartel providing information about rival Mexican drug gangs to the DEA in exchange for the U.S. government agreeing not to interfere with Sinaloa shipments into the United States of drugs, of cocaine, and the dismissal of criminal charges against cartel participants. I mean, this is amazing. It is alleged that U.S. efforts were part of a strategy previously employed by the U.S. government in combating Colombian drug cartels, whereby the government would divide and conquer by making sweetheart deals with one cartel in order to gain information to be used in destroying the cooperating cartel's rivals. So basically, the Sinaloa cartel was allowed to become this powerful paramilitary style force and take over Culiacan, gather up all these weapons that you see on display now in the street as part of this bungled Obama administration strategy to take out other gangs like the Zetas or the Tijuana cartel. And it reminds me a lot of arming the moderate rebels in Syria or something, but we armed the Sinaloa cartel and allowed them to profit and pump drugs into our communities as part of this bizarre strategy. And I remember at the time, Dan, it was like, oh, Darrell Issa and the Republicans are making up all these conspiracy theories. It's like, no, it was actually real.
Well, this happened in Colombia too. Actually, it's even portrayed in the Netflix series Narcos, which is a great show. I don't know if you've seen it, but what it shows, and it's true, this happened. The DEA worked with the Cali cartel to destroy Pablo Escobar's Medellin cartel.
Right.
And the Cali cartel was run by the Castaño brothers, who then go on to create the AUC paramilitary death squads. Those are the people we worked with, right? And so what you see time and time, of course, we can get into the Contras as well. The CIA helped fund the Contras by selling cocaine in the streets of the United States. There was, of course, during the Vietnam War as well, heroin was sold to fund CIA operations in Indochina. What we see time and time again is that the U.S., including the DEA, they're not so much against drugs being trafficked. They just want to make sure the people we like are the ones trafficking them. That's what it comes down to. And that is the sickening part of all this. This has done nothing to stop the drug flow in America. It just enriches the people that the U.S. politically supports. That's what this is about.
And it may even increase the drug flow if certain forces can actually get a cut of the profits, as we saw during the 1980s.
Yeah, well, and of course, the biggest example of this is the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan in 2001. At the time the U.S. invaded, the Taliban had gotten poppy production almost nothing.
Yeah.
And then within a short time after the U.S. invasion, with the U.S. troops all over the place, DEA agents all over the place, CIA agents all over the place, somehow Afghanistan goes back to supplying the world with 85% of its heroin. How'd that happen?
It's all a mystery.
Incredible. Yeah, total mystery, Max.
Total mystery. And just a final point, which is that all the spectacle of all this violence in northern Mexico, not so far from the U.S.-Mexico border, is prompting kind of right-wing elements who want to militarize the border to call for an intervention, a military intervention in Mexico. And then you have the more centrist elements in Washington using this to attack AMLO and saying this, shows that the country is unstable under his watch. But Dan Kovalik, thank you so much for joining us and for all your insights and all the work that you're doing both on the ground and, all the analysis that you do day in and day out. once again, let's plug your forthcoming book on Nicaragua.
Yeah, Nicaragua, A History of U.S. Intervention and Resistance. Pick it up where books are sold. And Max, I just want to thank you. I admire everything you do. I admire the Grayzone, and please support the Grayzone. Support it at their Patreon account. Thank you very much, Max.
Support it right at the banner right above us. Well, thanks a lot, Dan.
Okay, we'll see you.